This is Mac OS Ken.
A couple of Apple targets go higher. Apple Intelligence LLM talk, and an Apple TV Plus title owns U.S. streaming charts. It is Monday, the 24th of June, 2024. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by Pen Chalet, selling exquisite fountain pens for over 10 years with special offers for Mac OS Ken listeners at penchalet.com/macosken. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macosken. Apple ended the week last week with two significant price target increases. Business Insider wrote them both up, one from CFRA and the other from Bernstein Research. On the first, CFRA analyst Angelo Zeno thinks Apple Intelligence is setting iPhone up to be the ultimate personal assistant. He's not expecting a supercycle, though. Instead, he sees a growing number of upgrades, not one big surge. Quoting the analyst, "We expect Apple Intelligence to help support incremental consumer upgrades driven by loyalists and an aging installed base, with AI being more evolutionary than cyclical that will aid multiple years of growth." That said, indications are that he is expecting more from iPhone 16 this fall than are many of his counterparts. He's looking for unit growth of 3% to 5%, according to the piece. He also thinks Apple could raise the prices on those devices. Zeno has a positive rating on Apple's shares. He used last week's note to raise his price target on the shares from $210 to $240. As for the other notable bump, Bernstein research analyst Tony Sacconaghi apparently got tired of all the water he was under. What lifted him out of it was Apple Intelligence. The way he sees it, Apple can bring AI to the masses with increasing everyday utility. Apple is reportedly not paying ChatGPT, highlighting the power it holds. How could Apple make money off this? Let the Sacconator count the ways. There's an increase in hardware sales because, duh. The analyst indicates that Apple could make money on ads returned through AI search queries. They could make more from the App Store if people will pay more for AI-focused applications. And finally, the piece has the analyst indicating that Apple could leverage Apple Intelligence to serve as a channel intermediary to third-party apps, with Apple capturing a commission on commerce or a promotion fee. That sounds a lot like making more money off the App Store to me, but what do I know? I know this. Sacconaghi is no longer underwater on his Apple target. He's got a positive rating on the company's shares. He used last week's note to raise his price target on the shares from $195 to $240. A somewhat surprising and in-your-face announcement from Apple late last week. A piece from Bloomberg had the company saying that the Digital Markets Act, or DMA, in the European Union was keeping Apple from releasing some much-anticipated features in the EU. Features cited in the report include iPhone mirroring, SharePlay screen sharing, and, perhaps the biggest, Apple Intelligence. In a statement, Apple said, "We are concerned that the interoperability requirements of the DMA could force us to compromise the integrity of our products in ways that risk user privacy and data security." Adding color, Bloomberg explains DMA rules mean tech services are prohibited from favoring their own offerings over those of rivals. They're barred from combining personal data across their different services, blocked from using information they collect from third-party merchants to compete against them, and have to allow users to download apps from rival platforms. While Apple is one of 6 tech companies deemed gatekeepers by the European Union and subject to stricter scrutiny than others, Bloomberg says it's unclear how the aforementioned features might run afoul of DMA rules. That said, Apple's announcement may anger some EU customers, with some thinking that anger will be directed at regulators, not the Cupertino company. The EU did issue a response to Apple's statement. The Bloomberg piece had the governing body saying gatekeepers are welcome to offer their services in Europe, provided that they comply with our rules aimed at ensuring fair competition. While apparently choosing to keep Apple Intelligence out of the EU, the company cannot take it to China, at least not with one of the biggest features, integration with ChatGPT. A piece from the Wall Street Journal points out that ChatGPT is not available in China. The report says that is prompting Apple to seek a local partner for its artificial intelligence services. The Journal has secret peeps said to know a thing or two about a thing or two, indicating that Apple has held talks with several Chinese companies that make AI models, including search engine company Baidu, e-commerce leader Alibaba Group, and Beijing-based startup Baishuan AI. As for why they have to go local, it's China. Over there, the Journal says companies must seek Beijing's approval before introducing AI chatbots built on large language models. Regulators vet the models to ensure they don't influence public opinion in a way the government doesn't approve. The report says earlier this year, Apple angled for approval for a foreign LLM to be used in its devices in China. Not surprisingly, that was a non-starter. There is this other problem, though. China's own LLMs are sometimes reviewed less favorably than the likes of Google, which, it's worth remembering, has suggested adding gasoline to spaghetti for an added kick. I know, like a Beatles song, it's getting better all the time. Still, the piece says the capabilities of the Baidu-powered AI have drawn some unfavorable reviews from Chinese internet users. Some compared Google's AI on the Galaxy S24 with Baidu's and found Google was able to identify car models and buildings from photographs, while Baidu could not. That said, the piece says others praised Baidu's technology, saying its Chinese language translation was more authentic and its search results were more relevant to users in China. The Journal piece also calls attention to the renewed wave of Chinese patriotism that has boosted iPhone competitors of late. That leaves at least one analyst quoted in the report wondering whether purveyors of AI in China will be allowed to make an LLM deal with the Cupertino company. Back here in the West, an idea that sounds really just terrible. Another piece from the Wall Street Journal says Apple and Facebook parent Meta have held talks about potentially integrating Meta's generative AI model into Apple Intelligence. Now, before you freak out, assuming you were inclined to, this may be another one of those everybody talks to everybody all the time things. In addition to Google and Meta, the report has unnamed sources indicating that AI startups Anthropic and Perplexity also have had discussions with Apple. And of course, there's OpenAI, with whom the Cupertino company has partnered for its Apple Intelligence launch. Finally, it may just be about giving the people what they want, or being able to spin it that way anyway. If Apple strikes deals with partners beyond OpenAI, the Journal points to past statements from Apple indicating that customers could choose which external AI models they want to use in addition to Apple's internal systems. If a deal is struck between Apple and Meta, won't it be interesting to know that hell has officially, actually, and fully frozen over? More news in a moment, but first a word from today's sponsor, Pen Chalet. I went to my fountain pen club over the weekend. Yes, I go to one of those. Guy showed me a really neat pen out of China. Titanium, sells for about $100. He asked me what kind of pen I used. Almost sheepishly, I showed him my herringbone fountain pen from Conklin that I got from Pen Chalet sometime last year, I think. and this guy was blown away. He liked the color, he loved the feel. His pen was better in theory, but honestly, you never know which pen is going to be the pen for you. That said, I worked with Pen Chalet to set up a couple of excellent starter boxes for you, if you're new or getting back into the fountain pen thing. Choose either a Pilot Metropolitan, which was my daily driver for a while, or a Lamy Safari, which has got some great features for new fountain pen users, like an ink window and a grip that practically makes you hold the pen correctly. You get the pen, good paper for fountain pen inks, a good ink, and a bit of pen flush to keep your pen tip top, all bundled together and all at a discount. Or think outside the boxes. If something else grabs your eye, you can use code MOK10 for 10% off. Personally, I think there's a fountain pen out there for everybody. Find yours. Head to penchalet.com/MacOSKen. Check out the discounted starter boxes or use code MOK10 for 10% off other purchases. That's penchalet.com/MacOSKen. And a big thanks to Pen Chalet for sponsoring today's show. Word of an interesting McKinsey & Company study aimed at in-car infotainment systems. The site CarScoops has the study indicating that what people really want for an in-car system is basically an extension of their phone. According to the report, globally, 30% of those in the market for an electric vehicle and 35% of those looking to buy a combustion car say not having Apple CarPlay or Android Auto is a deal breaker. The sentiment is shared in the U.S., where 25% of EV buyers and 38% of combustion car buyers say they are not interested in purchasing a vehicle if it doesn't have smartphone mirroring. While some people said they would be willing to pay a premium for CarPlay or Android Auto, 30% of EV buyers, 17% of combustibles, a whopping 52% said that if Apple and Google systems were removed from their current vehicle, they'd start using their smartphone. 35% said they would settle for whatever built-in offering was offered, while 14% said they would change brands for their next vehicle purchase. Kind of a big deal, with EV makers like Tesla and Rivian having launched with their own infotainment systems and no support for CarPlay or Android Auto. It is likely a much bigger deal, though, for GM, which plans to ditch support for smartphone offerings and go with its own thing with upcoming EVs. While GM spins the move as one that enables deeper integration with vehicle controls and status, alongside features like voice assistant, navigation, music, texts, calls, apps, and more, there is also a dollars and cents angle. CarScoops says GM also believes forcing owners to use its native infotainment system will open it up to a whole new stream of revenue where it will be able to sell service subscriptions to owners. Because if there's one thing consumers like, it's being forced. And finally today, called it, nailed it, saw this one coming. The Apple TV Plus Jake Gyllenhaal limited drama series Presumed Innocent currently owns the streaming charts here in the States. With its first full week of availability behind it, a piece from Cult of Mac says the series was #1 on the most recent reports from both Real Good and Just Watch. If you are unfamiliar, Apple's description says the gripping series takes viewers on a journey through a horrific murder that upends the Chicago prosecuting attorney's office when Chief Deputy Prosecutor Rusty Sabich is suspected of the crime. The series explores obsession, sex, politics, and the power and limits of love as the accused fights to hold his family and marriage together. Presumed Innocent is one of 2 Apple TV Plus titles gracing both streaming TV charts. Dark Matter is still delivering for the Cupertino streamer. It came in at number 5 on the top 10 lists of both Just Watch and Real Good. macOS Ken, brought to you by me, and sponsored by Pen Chalet, selling exquisite fountain pens for over 10 years, with special offers for macOS Ken listeners at penchalet.com/macOSKen. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSKen. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media. Online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. Info at macosken.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.